We know the cities, we know the locations, we have the strategic connections. We've already gone and lit the fires of prayer and prayed with these ones, and we're in the planting process. And so there's an opportunity for people to be a part of getting to the 7 and filling the 1040 window with light.
Thank you for watching the MAPS Global podcast, where we discuss leadership and culture within the convergence of worship, prayer, and missions in your neighborhood and in the nations.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another special episode of the MAPS Global podcast. Woo! Yeah! We're so pumped to be here. This is a special episode, kind of a break from the series that we've been on, because we're in a special moment right now. We're in year-end giving at MAPS Global. We've got some incredible stories, and the Lord has been doing so much this year in MAPS Global. Sure. Like across the 1040 window, the Lord has been doing so much. And so we're here today to talk about it. We've got, you know him.
I'm always here.
R.A. Martinez, president, founder, MAPS Global.
I'm usually kind of facing that way, so I feel, there we go. That's better.
Let's go. And then we have
all around the table.
We have the
senior vice president. The S is really important in that, the senior vice president.
It is. Let's go. Luke
Finance
Jeffrey.
and operations. This is the guy that makes it run, everybody. He's the oil in the wheels. He's the gas in the machine. He's the
metaphor.
Let's go. Spitting them out. No, but Luke is. And it's been a minute since you've been on the podcast,
been a minute,
right?
Guys, I'm happy to be here.
Let's go.
We're in a new location. And
well, for you, yeah.
Yeah.
Down here,
y'all are normally.
Oh, we're in the basement, by the way. If you ever want to find us in the podcast, we're in the basement.
Yeah, we're down here.
It looks beautiful, though. They did it. Luke actually holds a special place in the MAPS Global podcast because he hosted one of the most downloaded MAPS Global podcasts of all time, most listened to of all time.
Wow. Is it still true?
I don't know.
Go.
I mean, it's in the top.
Let's go.
That's true. I haven't checked in a year.
Wow.
I did have a couple people send me episode 8. Yeah. They're like, I listened to this the other day.
Wow.
Way back.
Lives on.
Him and his best bud and our friend did a podcast on, what was it?
Missions, business.
Yeah.
Finance.
All that.
Incredible.
And it's like
Great
one of our
Commission.
top.
Yeah.
You know, we're like at 100 and what episodes now? 30, something like that, 150 maybe.
Yeah, we're up.
We're up there.
Yeah, we're in the hundreds for sure.
This was episode 8,
10, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so
OG
legend of the podcast, right?
It's fun to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to dive in today because, like I said, we got some really exciting stuff. We got some stories and testimonies that we want to tell that God's been doing. And then also just kind of invite you guys as the listeners into, you hear us on the podcast talk about teachings, talk about things that we're sharing, that we're casting vision for. But we don't often get to sit down like this and just talk about what has actually been happening in our midst and happening at our bases overseas, tell the stories and invite you to be a part of it with us. So this is going to be a fun time. I'm really excited to dive in. So with that, let's kick the episode off with a few stories.
Let's do it.
Of what the Lord's been doing this year, and then we'll take it into to what's been happening and what will be happening in this next year. But let's kick it off with a story. Mr. President, do you want to start us off, or who's feeling the pioneer spirit
I'm always feeling
to lead us in?
But I want to hear, let's start with Luke.
All right.
Come on.
Because you guys always hear me talk.
It's
true.
It's
not bad.
It's true.
Nobody's complaining, I don't think.
Yeah.
Luke.
Hopefully.
Okay, story.
I hide those comments. I'm playing.
They're my own heart.
I totally know. All right, Luke.
In April, we hosted this multinational 50 hours of prayer. which was incredible.
Yes.
Across 7 different locations, and not just any 7 locations, but the 7 places that we are either actively have a base at, a missions base at, or we're going to be planting one of these missions bases. And you came to us at the beginning of the year, right before the beginning of the year, and you said, hey, I'm feeling stirred. I think the Lord might be asking us to do the 50 hours, which we've been doing for 10 years now.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah.
This is the 10th year.
Right.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
to do it in not just any location, but to do it in the 7 locations that we're going to have the mission spaces in, or that we already have them in.
That's right.
And we prayed and felt like that was the Lord, and so we pressed a big green light on it.
Tell the truth. You came to me and you said, I think we should do all 7 locations. And what did I say?
You said, let's pray about it.
Okay. They're being very generous.
I
was like, it's a lot of work.
No, he poured a little water on it. Where you were like, let's wait and see if the Lord speaks about it.
If you pour water on it, it still lights on fire. It's God.
Yeah.
Totally. So, I think you told us like end of last year, and I said, let's just sit on it. We'll see. And then we got to January. It's like,
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. So we hit gas on it, and there was a lot of grace. I mean, a lot of people were excited around here with our staff, and then we had a ton of interest from people around the nation to come on a short-term trip.
Yep.
And then overseas, as we were sharing with our leaders there, and then some of the strategic partners that we work with, amazing men and women, they were like, this is the Lord. In fact, some of them already had it on their schedule.
In East Africa, where you went, you took a team. They had already had the dates scheduled to do a 50 hours on their own.
That was wild.
So when I called them, because they had done a 50 hours with us 6 months earlier,
right
when the war broke out, October 7th in Israel and Gaza, and they had already scheduled it, and they joined with our base in the Middle East base in Levant and then East Africa, and we surrounded Israel with prayer. Then the Lord gave them a date after that 50 hours for April. So when I called them in February, I said, hey, would you guys want to join with us? They said, what's the dates? I told them April, whatever it was, 14 through 16. They said, oh, we've already got it scheduled. I was like,
that's crazy.
Okay.
Maybe this is God.
God's already got this on his calendar, which that's a very frequent occurrence with our multinational 50-hour prayer meeting. We always stumble into, God already has this on his calendar.
Yeah.
I feel. Yeah.
And so you were in East Africa, but one of the testimonies that I love from the 50 hours actually happened there.
Yeah.
And it was the story of this man named Muhammad, who he actually had met Jesus in an Orthodox church and received Christ, had a Bible, and then went back to his home, came from a Muslim background.
Yeah.
So his family was Muslim, and he went back to his home, and he would read his Bible, but he'd actually hide it under his pillow or under his bed, so that his family members couldn't find it. And then one day, his brother actually finds the Bible and gets really upset with him and begins beating him harshly, and then actually takes him up to the rooftop of their apartment building and ties him up there.
Yeah.
And leaves him to the elements out there for 19 days.
Yeah.
And so Muhammad's up there, and his brother's bringing him a little bit of water, a little bit of bread day after day. And he's just crying out to the Lord. And in fact, when he was beaten, his jaw was broken.
Yeah.
Among other things. And so he's up there, and then on the 19th day, as he's praying, his brother comes up, brings him the water and the bread, and he gives it to him. We got some coffee cups here, gives it to him, and he starts drinking the water, and the water doesn't run out.
Yeah.
And he starts eating the bread, and the bread's like,
I haven't heard this part.
The bread's multiplying as he's eating it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the brother gets so terrified. He gets so freaked out watching Muhammad drink the water and eat the bread, and it's multiplying as he's consuming it, that he just doesn't know what to do. So he goes up and unties
It's giving Exodus, wilderness, Israel vibes.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Got it.
So he goes up and unties him.
Yeah.
And then just runs away.
Yeah.
Terrified.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And so Muhammad's free.
Yeah.
And he goes freely. But the problem was he actually experienced ongoing pain in his jaw because it didn't heal properly.
Yeah.
And so he was like this bird with a broken wing, like trying to soar in salvation and walk in this new life in Christ. But he continued to experience overwhelming pain whenever he would share with people about Jesus, because his desire was, I was saved, right, as a Muslim background individual, and now I want other Muslims to come and follow Jesus.
Yeah.
But whenever he would share, he had this overwhelming pain come over him. And so it really discouraged him, and he wasn't able to find a spiritual flock to run with. And so anyways, he hears years later about the 50 hours prayer meeting this past April. Yeah. Right. And he decides, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to come.
Yeah.
And so he ends up coming. And then one of our missionaries here, who's on the trip with you, and you're prepping him to go, and you're like, all right, guys, we're going to pray, preach, and sing. This is going to be awesome. Totally. He shows up and sees this guy in the back of the room, just kind of standing there, observing, trying to figure out what's going on in the prayer meeting, right? And feels drawn to go over and actually introduce himself and pray for him, ask him if there's anything that he could pray for him for. Yeah. And so Muhammad says, this is who I am, da, da, da. And actually, yes, if you could pray for me because I've experienced this trauma and brokenness, and also my body's not right. Like my jaw's still messed up. And every time I try to share the gospel, this overwhelming pain comes over me, over my head, over my jaw. And so he shares that. And one of the guys on the short-term trips goes, okay, let's pray. Totally. Right. Yep. And lays hands on him. And as he's praying for him, his shattered jaw just snaps back into place. Yeah. And he gets healed. Yeah. And then what I love about this story is not just the supernatural healing that happens, but then he also goes, you know what? I think I found a place where I can grow. Right. Yeah. And you were able to connect him, I think, right?
Yeah. We connected him to the local leaders there that were doing discipleship with Muslim background believers.
Come on, dude. And so not only does he get an encounter with God and transformational healing, but then he's able to now walk that out and get discipled. Yeah. And that's what I love about the 50 hours is that connection between transformational experience, but then in the context of these Antioch, these mission spaces, then they can get formed and developed and walk with someone who understands the context that they're coming out of. Yes. This is very different than how we think, Christian background.
Totally.
Yeah.
A religious decision, a faith decision, but this is their entire livelihood, socioeconomic, family, everything.
That's right. Yes. That's right.
And so that's one of my favorite stories about the 50 hours.
That is awesome. There were things in there I hadn't heard yet. That was
that's wild.
Sick.
That's wild.
Let's go. We get to do this. Let's go. That's amazing. I want to spotlight something on that. So the 50 hours, we did a 50-hour prayer meeting, 7 locations simultaneously. Luke said the 7 locations are important to us because it's the 7 regions, cities, where we are in the process of planting our missions bases centered around prayer and worship, training and discipleship and church communities. Why that one last April was important is because it was the first time that we were in all 7 locations as a family simultaneously. Yeah. Right. It was kind of what we said is we're planting the flag. Yeah. Not the American flag, the flag that has a slain lamb on it. Planting the flag in these 7 locations saying, Lord, we believe that you want to raise up unceasing worship, proclamation of the gospel, and light fires of present-centered communities through this region. So that was a huge moment for us. Yeah. As a spiritual family. And for those of you who have been tracking with us, it's a huge moment and I would say a huge season we're in with Maps Global, where we're kind of right in the middle of this 7-year vision, and we're actually smack dab in the middle of this 7-year vision between 2021 and 2028.
Yeah.
And as we're crossing the threshold halfway, we have now identified and started the planting process of all 7 bases.
Yeah.
Which is just like massive.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're just tuning in now, you're really, and you haven't heard that, you'd want to go back and listen to it, because you're kind of like opening a book in the middle of the story.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's we just felt such a grace, and it was such a prophetic kind of act.
Yeah.
In terms of establishing these bases. So that was awesome. And we had over 1,000 people, conservatively, about 1,000 people together across the 1040 window. That's not including all of our, people in the West that were joining with us virtually, but in these prayer rooms, these 7 prayer rooms, we had about 1,000 people.
Yeah, between our staff, missionaries, people from our other bases, local believers,
other
local church
organizations.
groups.
Yeah. And it was a 1040 window prayer meeting.
Yeah.
And so that was huge for us. Huge step. Big thanks to you for pushing us forward there on that.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So even like when we're talking about this podcast, and it's a little bit of a year in review, a little bit of future focused, here's where we're at. That's a huge kind of point just to put down there is we have started the planting process for all 7 bases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
which is huge.
It's
yes.
I don't know. I don't have language. And like, it's just like sledding downhill fast, but
that's
fun.
amazing.
It's amazing.
Yes. And we're gonna talk in a minute a little bit more about bases and what is a base, like what are we planting, and a little bit of transformation story.
We haven't said where,
happening.
but the where's too is really important.
Yeah. But right before we dive into that, give us a story.
My favorite, I'm going to give us a storyline.
Okay.
That's unfolding.
Let's go.
Which I have
a true visionary. I'm going to give you a storyline. I love it.
Anyways, people like know to ask me questions very specifically, or I'll take the long way around together. But I'm gonna give a storyline that's unfolding that I'm really excited about.
Yeah,
and it had it started a bit. I mean, it started before that, but in terms of this new phase of North Africa, started at that 50 hours.
That's right.
Where I and a number of our senior leaders, we went in because it was our first time into this country and this location. And we went in while you were in East Africa, you were all over the place.
I was in
Eurasia,
Middle East.
Middle East. And you, how many people were in that prayer meeting over? A couple hundred, maybe. A couple hundred. Yeah, a couple hundred. Yeah, we had 8. We had 8, except for a group of young people that would just happen to be in town, passing through with another missions organization, and they saved our lives by taking 4 hours out of the 50 so we could take naps. It was amazing.
Wow.
But 8 of us went in, and we went in for the first time and did our first 50 hours in North Africa. In one of the most closed nations in the world in terms of the gospel. And incredible things happened while they're there, but for the sake of the storyline, I just want to connect this, because I would say for us this year, a big part of this year has been about North Africa.
Yeah.
And to put in perspective, the region and the nation that we did this 50 hours in, a local believer, a local person, a national, it's illegal for them to be in a gathering of Christian missionaries. Yeah. They will get arrested.
Yeah.
The church is underground. It meets in houses, and it moves the days that it meets, so the police can't find them. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, 8 of us split up into 2 teams of 4, and we did 50 hours, 2 hours, 4 hours on, 4 hours off. It was plow. It was Iraq for us. It was like back in Iraq. And while we were there, a number of significant things happened. But two things I want to highlight that points to the storyline. One is that I actually met with two different pastors, local pastors. We had to meet in secret. The first one I met back in the back of a restaurant upstairs, kind of very, very on the down low. And as soon as I walked in, he says, "Are you Randy from Maps Global?" And I said, I didn't even know who he was because we had just been WhatsApping.
Yeah.
I said, yes. He goes, "I know all about you." He goes, all our churches, there's every pastor in this nation knows each other, right? It's because it's so small. They go, all the churches know about you guys. And they said, "We're so excited because we know what happens when Maps Global comes to do prayer meetings." Because they had been tracking the story of our 50 hours. They had seen our documentary, and
Dude,
it sparked.
That's crazy.
It was crazy.
That's
It was a little unnerving.
Yeah.
Because for all I know, he could be whatever,
Yeah.
But he was like, we know what happens when Maps Global comes into a region to do prayer meetings.
Wow.
He said, all of our churches are going to be praying with you from our houses. We're going to join in.
Yeah.
And I went, what is going on? This is crazy. The second thing that happened that's important to the storyline is that while we were there, one of the main leader for one of the biggest missions organizations in the world, I met with him. He met with us. They came into the prayer meeting, and he said, "I just want to share this prophetic word because I believe it's a now word. I believe what we're doing here with this 50 hours is a fulfillment." And he shares this long, 20-year prophetic word about this flood, these rivers breaking out in the country, and how it would be a sign of harvest, a season of harvest for this nation.
Wow.
And it was just while I was listening, I was like, wow, this is a true prophetic word, And anyways, he was telling a little bit about when the earthquake hit, new rivers were rerouted and new rivers started flowing in the desert regions. And he was like, something's happening. Anyway, so I just logged that. He was like, there's a word that a flood's going to hit and it's going to be a sign.
Yeah.
So fast forward, this is the cool part. So we came out of that 50 hours. So we said, okay, we got clarity from heaven where we're going to plant this lampstand of 9-day prayer, what city, what country, Now it's just a matter of saying yes and letting the Lord unfold the story. Fast forward to annual gathering, which is in August, and we were planning on sending our placement team to the Levant, and then for different reasons, circumstantial and situational, we said, hey, that's not a good idea. And it just happened to be that the only location that we could pivot to right away was North Africa, which was not even on the script.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? This is crazy. And so, we said, okay, let's take 36 hours pray about it.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, water. And we said, no, this is the Lord. And so we pivoted. We sent our first placement team, 90-day placement team, right back to the city that I was just in 3 months earlier, breaking open that ground for the house of prayer. And they land. And here's what's really cool. They just got back. In fact, you can probably hear them upstairs.
Yeah, you know what they're doing?
They're literally
telling all the stories.
These stories upstairs. If you can hear shouts, it's that team right now.
So awesome.
Talking about what God did in North Africa.
Totally.
Cheering.
And here's the crazy thing. So they land and they pick up the 50 hours we started in April. They pick up and every day they're starting the prayer meetings.
Yeah.
And they're there praying, preaching, singing every day. And about a few weeks, I want to say 3, 4, 5 weeks into them being there, a rainstorm hits the nation. And for the first time in 70 years, the Sahara Desert flooded.
Yeah.
Now, I don't even have time to tell you about the super bloom and all of that became really important to us between 50 hours and that team. And so look up super bloom, Google it. But but this rainstorm hit the Sahara and it flooded for the first time in 70 years while our team was there praying. And all of the leaders on the ground go, that's the sign.
Wow.
That is the sign.
Wow.
And so we're like, what the heck is going on?
Crazy.
And so then we're praying every day, ministering to the Lord, building an altar, and then we're going out into the streets. I flew in about a month ago to just support our team and meet with the leaders. I'm sitting down with the leaders that have been there for 5, 6, 7. Nobody's been there longer than 10 years because they kicked out all the missionaries 10 years ago. He said, hey, I just want to tell you something. He goes, I can hear him. He goes, I'm not a house of prayer guy. I love when anybody leads with that.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm not a house of prayer guy. I don't understand it. He goes, but all I know is this. He said, ever since the MAPS Global team got here and started praying every single day, he said, we've experienced more openness to the gospel in this city than we have in the last 7 years.
Wow.
And he goes, I don't know. We have nothing else to point this shift to except for the prayer meeting that started.
Wow.
And I was like, well, then you understand the house of prayer. That is the house of prayer.
Totally.
It opens doors for the gospel.
Right.
It pushes back darkness. It releases light.
Yeah.
And it lifts demonic blinders off of people. And Paul says, pray for me that a door would be open for the word. So they're like, we've got to do this. They're like, we got to start the house of prayer. I'm like, okay, give me a second. We got to get back. So a week later, this is crazy. Our team there, we flew a short-term trip.
Yeah.
Over, and they're going to do another 50 hours. They ended up doing 35-hour prayer meeting. The short-term team lands. The day they land, a historic rainstorm sits on the, they did one day of EV, and then they were stuck in the prayer room the rest of the day because a historic rainstorm hit, and it rained for like 5 or 6 days straight, historically, while we were doing the 35 hours there. And so it's just like signs in the heavens, signs on earth, that are not just signs, so we can go, ooh, that's cool. They're manifesting in a region opening for the gospel,
right?
And a house of a prayer meeting that is starting that will have no end to it eventually. And so for me, when you say tell a story about the last year, for me it's the storyline of North Africa, one of the most closed regions in the earth, that the Lord's going, I'm going to call a people to minister to me night and day. And it's going to open up the region for the gospel. And then a flood of the Spirit's going to come in, and we're going to see a super bloom of salvation, healing, deliverance, and discipleship.
Yeah, come on.
And that's what's on God's calendar for North Africa. We get to do this.
Let's
Let's
go. My gosh. Come on.
That's that's where I'm at.
No, man, that's amazing. And the thing is we experience, like, it's cool to sit here and tell the stories, but like stuff like this is actually happening. Like, I mean, not every time is there a historic rainstorm in Super Bloom, although there's a historic outpouring in the Arab Gulf.
Totally.
Like a flooding.
In April, the day our team landed, the city flooded for the first time in 100 years, and guys were taking jet skis down the street.
Yeah, totally. But the cool thing is this is not like, wow, accidentally this one thing happened one time. Totally. Ever since we've been doing day and night prayer, married to missions in the 1040 window, the Lord is breathing, opening up doors. And when we're experiencing story after story after story, and which is why we're planting bases across the 1040 window, because Jesus is worthy of a song. That's right.
And he's already, I've been thinking a lot about Luke 9 and 10. I don't want to tangent, but Luke 10:1, it says, then he called 72 others. So after he sent the 12, then he sent 72 others. And he says, and he sent them before his face into every town and city that he was about to go. And I think we're experiencing this call for people, that the Lord of the harvest is calling people into a region that he's about to visit with power, and he wants friends there preparing the way for him to go. Yeah. And because when I look at my Bible, I'm going to get preachy. I look at the scriptures, the Lord's going to have not only just a harvest across the Middle East, North Africa, Eurasia, Arab Gulf, he's going to have a worship movement in Isaiah 19, Isaiah 42, Malachi 1 and 11, Matthew 24:14, Amos 9:11. He's going to have this worship movement that's going to fill the earth, and particularly from the prophetic scriptures, the region of North Africa, Middle East, Arab Gulf, and Eurasia. There's highways that are going to be built, north, south, east, and west, filled with worship. And so what's happening is Luke 10:1, he's calling others, the 72 others, to come before his face, and then be sent out to every town and village he's about to go.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of excitement and hope about the next 10 and 20 years of the missions enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Let's go. Come on.
I'm signing up again.
That's good.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Let's go. Well, I think you said something really important, because I wanted to tell a story that we see happen a lot. And I love this guy's story because he's a student that came in and trained over our last fiscal year and is just flourishing now. He's about to head to he's on the plant team that'll be going to the Himalayas.
And he just got back from doing how long? 6 weeks in the Levant. We sent him short term to reinforce our team, who's ministering to 1.5 million refugees right now.
Yeah. And but because you said that, of the hope that you feel for the missions enterprise, and that one of the things that we do, we send teams, but we do 50 hours. But if you're just tuning into the podcast or newer, we train. And we train up to send laborers. And I love Oliver's story, because he was 19 years old at a Christian university and filled just with a desire to follow God's call for his life.
Totally.
Like so many young people, passion to step into the assignment God has for them, but no clue what that was. When I sat down and talked to him, he said he felt like he was blindfolded in a dark room trying to reach his way forward into his calling, but he couldn't grab hold of anything. And so he began to pray with some students gathering on his campus, began to do prayer and started asking God to give him his heart. And the Lord did. He met him this one night.
The dangerous prayer.
Totally.
The very dangerous prayer.
He met him this one night in a prayer garden. And because he was at a Christian university, he goes into this prayer garden and just gets a burden from the Lord for nations.
Yeah.
And but still felt in the dark room, like, how do I move forward into a call to
prophetic
missions,
word,
to the
but no
nations.
assignment.
Yeah. And so an opportunity pops up to go on a solo missions trip to the Middle East, and he's eager, doesn't feel, and so he just jumps at it. And but it's a solo missions trip, and he quickly finds out that this is hard. He gets there, he's alone.
I don't even know what that means.
Meaning, there was no team.
He had to arrange.
He had to arrange his own housing. Wow. He had to try to raise money all alone to go, because he was just so passionate, passionate young person, you know? And so he's in the Middle East. And he sat down and told me, he said, it was so difficult. It was so hard. And he had this moment with the Lord as he was alone walking down a street in the Middle East, where the Lord whispered to him and said, Oliver, you can do this all alone, or you could do this with a family, and you'll learn things 10 years faster than if you just went the hard way and did this on your own.
Whoa.
And so he said, you could do this.
So many layers to
you
that
could
word.
do this alone, or you could do this with MAPS Global. And so that same day, he jumps online, fills out an application to the MAPS Global School, signs up. And he said when he arrived here, it was like he went from being blindfolded in that dark room to planted in a greenhouse with the light pouring in, illuminating his assignment, bringing clarity to the assignment on his life, but also nourishing him to grow into the plant that God wanted him to become, so that he could pick him up and plant him in the 1040 window.
I love it.
And so now he's flourishing. He's a leader in our school. And he's, like I said, he's on that.
Touching nations, man.
Nations. And he's preparing with this launch team to go on the pioneering team to plant our long-term base in the Himalayas.
The highest point in the earth.
Let's go.
Tops of the mountains.
Come
They're
on.
Saying glory to the righteous one.
Let's go. Let's go. And so anyways,
that's awesome.
We get to do this.
Come on.
But
guys, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going.
We're not going to quit.
We're not going to quit. I signed up again. Let's go.
Come on. And so anyways, these are just a few other stories. We got a couple more that we want to tell, but we've been talking about bases. I would love to just pause for a minute and just tell us tell us why these 7 bases.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can talk a little bit about what do we mean when we say base. Obviously, we've talked about prayer plus missions. We've talked a little bit about training, but put together for us why these 7 and what is a base? Because right now, a big opportunity we're inviting people into, and we'll talk more about this towards the end of the podcast. We have an incredible opportunity to double people's giving towards the vision of 7 bases being planted in the 1040 window.
Oh, totally.
And so let's talk about what that is.
To just release a surge
yes.
of resources and momentum towards this. Locations? You want me to
tell us the 7.
It's not, I'll keep it short, but I think it's really important so you can connect the where with the what. So the 7 bases in 7 years was the kind of strategic goal that came from a partly, not all, but part of what informed that language was a prophetic word that I got in 2018, I believe, when I was preaching at a student summit, actually. And I got pulled into a room with this guy I didn't know from Bob, and it ended up being a prophetic guy that's very influential in a number of church networks. Yeah. But I just didn't know him at all. Yeah. And so I'm sitting down with him, and my friend says, "Hey, this is Randy." He goes, "Don't tell me anything about you." He's the prophetic mystery guy.
Love it.
And he starts prophesying over me. And he starts talking, and he says a few things that have dynamically marked us. One, he says, one of the marks of your ministry is going to be leadership development. He says, you're going to enter into a season where you're going to develop 3 leaders that are going to turn around and develop 30, and it's going to be replicable, and it's going to be exponential. And I went, wow, like I didn't have that language back in 2018 that a main thrust of MAPS Global would be leadership development. Yeah. And now it's one of the 3 tracks in our school. And it's just a huge part. I mean, why we do this podcast.
Yeah.
So he tells me this, and then he goes, you're going to develop leaders that are going to plant 7 key bases. He called them campuses, 7 key bases around the world that are going to be hubs for their region for kingdom activity. And he said these 7 key campuses are gonna impact their region with the gospel and with prayer. And I go, wow, this is crazy. Because at the time, we had been working in North Iraq for a few years, and then we had the encounter about Eurasia. But I just didn't have that language of MAPS Global was going to spread across the 1040 window. I mean, when we started, we were kind of like, we're going to build a house of prayer in Eurasia. Yeah. And
totally.
So that was just stuck. And then, so I'm like, well, who is this guy? And why is he saying these things? And then he tells me a prophetic word about my youngest, or at the time, my youngest son. And he was like spot on. And I was like, okay, I don't know about those things, but this was right. So I should pay attention to that. So I just cataloged it, So we got to 2021, and we knew we were in a 7-year season, and that's a different story. But the Lord told us that we were coming into a 7-year season, and so I just brought that word to the team. And at that time, we had expanded into the Middle East, and so I went, "Oh, this is expanding." And so a lot of it, we took that prophetic word, and then we did our work and our planning and our math and our projections to go, "Oh wow, if we continue at the current growth rates, which is like 30 to 40% a year." Back then, it was like over 50% a year. It's like every year this thing doubled. It was a lot. And it was like hugging a rocket ship as it's taking off. And anyways, we said, wow, if this thing continues, we would have enough missionaries, enough human resources, and enough finances to fill 7 of these bases. Yeah. I didn't know where they would be. Yeah. But it was just like, oh, that's it. It's these 7 campuses, and we've got 7 years to do it. And so over the last 2 or 3 years, we've been on the journey of saying, Lord, where are these locations? Where are these places where you want to raise up? And it's not the only 7. Yeah. There's hundreds of locations God's going to raise up night and day prayer and worship, married to gospel proclamation, married to discipleship. But for us, what are these 7 key places? And it's just been, I mean, it would take 5 podcasts to tell a story about why these 7 places.
Yeah.
But I want to say with confidence, so you can hear me, these 7 places for us are the word of the Lord.
Yeah.
Not, oh, this would be cool to go do this. Like, and I think you've picked up a little bit even on this podcast. I'm not the guy that just hears a prophetic word and jumps out the window, right? I need a lot to line up. I need a couple years I need 10 different dreams, prophetic words to even go, okay, we should do this, right? Because I got to know that I know it's God. Mm-hmm. And I would say with the highest degree of confidence I consider that we have the word of the Lord of these 7 regions. Yeah. And then the more I look at these 7 regions and cities, the more I see the divine strategy in it.
Yeah.
So here are the 7 regions. One is Eurasia, which we've been there now. We've been working there for 10, 12 years, but we've had our long-term base operating for about 6.
That's right.
6 years. In the largest unreached Muslim nation in the world. And we have seen in the course of that last 6 years, as daily prayer is going and our training school has had, we've baptized over 40 new believers. It's somewhere around 45. I don't know for sure. I mean, I would have to go get it, but I know it's there. 40 new believers, and we've training local leaders that are going back to their cities and planting churches and starting houses of prayer. And now a network of prayer has started across the whole nation. And the thing is just super blooming. Yeah. You know, it's just, so we've been there for 6 years. 2 Middle East. We've been there running that House of Prayer missions base for 4.5, 5 years.
Mm-hmm. 4.5.
And it has become one of the largest houses of prayer in the entire Middle East.
Wow.
Just, and it's mostly built, or the community is mostly comprised of Muslim background believers.
Wow.
And it's actually become the hub for discipleship and training for Muslim background believers in the region.
Wow.
And there's a number of reasons why, which I won't go into, but they're there, and we've got this amazing facility God's given us. It was actually an old university that we ended up moving into, and the thing's just taken off, and the leaders there are doing such a great job. I think the staff team right now, which is both Arabs and Western missionaries together on one team building, is how many staff do they have?
It's 19, 20.
19 or 20 staff running that house of prayer right now. Unbelievable.
Crazy.
Then number 3 is the Levant region, which is the Levant region. So, which is where right now our team is running and ministering to about 1.5 million refugees that have just migrated into the city that we're in. And it's one of the most historically strategic cities in that region. And we're praying every day, building the house of prayer, and now we're able to serve. And that's where Oliver was just a minute ago, serving 500 meals a day to refugees, providing beds, blankets, and humanitarian needs for these refugees who are all, I mean, almost exclusively Muslim, coming out of the region of the country that we couldn't get into.
Yeah.
Like, it was pretty much unengaged.
Yeah.
And now 1.5 million have migrated north and landed on our doorstep. And I was just on the call this morning with our base leader. I mean, just the fruit and the story. And it's in a place where, and this is no shade, but in a place where over the last 6 months to a year, most of the missions organizations have evacuated.
Yeah.
And we just felt from the Lord, and responsibly, we need to stay.
Yeah.
Because there's a door opening for the gospel right now. And so that base is moving. We're in the process right now of adopting the base in the Arab Gulf.
Yeah.
Which is in my opinion, one of the most strategic cities in the world.
Yeah.
This city has over 200 different nations represented in one city.
Yeah.
Just let that sink in.
Wow.
And a vast majority of those nations are from Central Asia and Southeast Asia, nations where we couldn't get into with the gospel, they're coming to this city.
Yeah.
And so it's poised to be a modern day Antioch to Pakistan and Afghanistan and Bhutan and Myanmar and Southeast Asia. And I mean, there's even North Koreans in this city.
Wow.
And so like, I'm just through the roof with the potential, the gospel potential of this city being a hub for Central Asia and Southeast Asia. And so we're right now in the process of adopting a house of prayer that's been going for 7 years now, bringing them into our family and then resourcing them with people and resources and training so that they can build this Antioch hub.
Yeah, come on.
And then the next 3 are in process. One was North Africa. I told you that. So we've started North Africa, one of the most closed nations in the world, like I said, and now it's just opening for the gospel. And there's we're being asked to come plant the house of prayer.
Well.
Then you got East Africa, which is where you were last 50 hours. And this is so interesting. Again, we're being asked to come in and help build the house of prayer. And what's so unique about this region is that this region already has influence in terms of music and media and culture across the entire Middle East. Yeah. Most of the media that's in Arabic comes out of this region.
Yeah.
And the heart of the believers in this region is to be an Antioch for the Middle East and North Africa.
Yeah.
And so just think about this for a second when you think about the potential, the mission strategy and potential. We're talking about putting a house of prayer and a training school in a location where there are local indigenous believers who already have a missions mindset to reach the region.
Totally.
They already speak the language. They're already near culture, and all they need is a little bit of training and some gas to get going.
Yeah.
I mean, that has the potential to be a game changer.
Yeah.
In terms of the gospel and specifically worship filling the Middle East from this nation. That's East Africa. And then last but not least is the Himalayas, the highest point on earth.
Come on.
In the city of 1,000 temples is what it's called.
10,000.
10,000 temples, sorry. The other, East Africa is 1,000 mosques. The city of 10,000 temples where both Buddhist and Hindu temples are going night and day, 24/7, chanting, singing, filling the atmosphere with demonic prayer. Wow. And God goes, no, actually it's mine.
Yeah.
Mine. And I'm gonna raise up a song from the highest point on earth, giving glory to Jesus and filling the mountains and trickling down from the mountains into northern India and in these regions. One of the most influential cities in that region. Wow. And so those are our 7 Antiochs right there.
Let's go.
And like, I'm sitting here going, let's do it tomorrow. We gotta go. And, but the thing that has been so exciting is that I would say up until this year, this year was the year we said, for sure, these are the 7 places. These are the 7 cities. Here are the people we're working with now.
Yeah. And that all initiated through the 50 hours.
Yeah.
Of really moving us from not quite sure about the exact locations
5, 6,
and the
7.
exact people in 5, 6, and 7 to solidified. These are the cities. These are the people we're going to be working with. And we are planting that flag and going, we're going to do this.
Yes.
So I think when we talk about what's transpired right over the course of 2024 through the 50 hours, I mean, that's a huge component.
Yes.
You heard the specific stories about East Africa, North Africa, but a huge part of that is just solidifying these places and preparing our spiritual family to begin to send and plant in those places.
And I want you to tell us, because one of the key components, and Randy touched on it, he said it, it's this component of worship and prayer, but also training school and a training hub, is a core component. When we say base, it's not just a prayer room that's praying, although it is that
centered around.
It's centered around that, but it's also a training hub. And man, I love Mirach's story.
Totally.
If I don't know if you want to tell it, but tell us a little bit. What is a base? Because Randy said Antioch.
Yeah,
and it is. We got that Antioch diagram for our bases, and then what? Yeah,
I also wrote a book about it. If you want,
let's go. Shameless plug. Get it?
Yeah, let me tell you about what a base is, and just kind of refresh our minds, because we might have different ideas of when we think missions base. Is it just this, concrete compound somewhere?
Is it an office?
Is it an office? Is it, what is it? And so there's three components when we say missions base. What we mean is, number one, the prayer room.
Yeah.
So we've got to build the altar first. And you even hear that in our 50 hours and our strategy. When we go into a region, the first thing that we do is build the altar of prayer and worship, get that thing lit up and burning, because then what we begin to see is gospel fruit all around us.
Yes.
So when the altar is established, gospel fruit begins to happen, just like Muhammad's story, right? People begin to flock to the presence of God, get healed, but then they need training.
Yeah.
And they need to be developed and formed. And that's where the greenhouse comes in. In fact, we were just looking at this morning.
Yes.
The lack of resources of seminary level theological education and formation that exists in this 1040 box is tremendous. And in Lausanne, the Lausanne conference, they just came out with this report that showed.
You can get that report, by the way. You can download it. Just Google it. Yeah.
Just Google Lausanne Conference.
Yeah.
They meet about every 20, 25 years to give us an update on the state of world evangelizations and global missions.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that just came out. They just had that conference just a few weeks ago. And in the report, you can see that most of our theological educations for formation of the future leaders of the church are in Europe and in the West. And
in the
some
global south.
in the global south and sub-Saharan Africa, and a little bit in South
Brazil,
America
mostly
and
in Brazil.
Southeast Asia. But across this box that we're working in,
where our bases are.
Yeah. The 1040
where all
window.
7 bases are,
Vacant.
where all the vast majority of the unreached are.
Yeah.
There are no centers for formation, almost none. I mean, Eurasia, for example, 2 that we know of.
And ours is 1.
Yeah.
Ours is 1.
Yeah.
In a country of 85 million people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's minuscule. Like
Totally.
it's like a grain of sand on the beach. You know what I mean? So, but they're so important because without those training centers, without those singing seminaries, there's no formation that can happen for someone who comes and has an encounter with God.
Right.
And so that's a key component of the basis. After the altar is established, then let's figure out how do we get the curriculum that we have translated into that local language and a program formed that's residential, that's hands-on discipleship, that's practical ministry skills, that's theological education, so that when somebody gets encountered by the living God, then they can go through that and come out into vocational ministry. And that's what we're seeing. I'll tell you the story of Mirach in a minute. But then the third thing that happens, which is really exciting, is once they're in that environment and planted, then they begin to get assignments, right?
Yes.
And church planning works begin to come out of those environments. And so that's the third component is the spiritual family. When they're in the spiritual family and they get around them, just like Paul and Barnabas, when they were at Antioch, they get around them and they go, the Holy Spirit's saying, you need to go.
Yeah.
And so then they begin to get them.
They go and they replicate
on their way.
They replicate what they got.
And they replicate the culture.
Come on.
So 3 components: prayer room, training,
Mhm.
and then spiritual family.
Yes.
And so I got a story of another 19-year-old kid, just like
Come on, dude.
Oliver,
Yeah,
right?
This guy's
Yeah.
lighting it up. By the
But
way.
this guy is amazing. I got
Yeah.
the chance to meet him when I was over in Eurasia. But 19-year-old kid. So picture this.
He was in the classes I was teaching in Eurasia.
Same.
And I know him. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
and he's sitting at his mom's house, actually.
Wow.
Kind of like Saul and Tarsus,
Wow.
you know, when you read the story.
And this is an indigenous 19-year-old,
Yep.
local to the region, just
Local
so that you guys know.
believer
Yeah.
in Eurasia,
Mhm.
sitting at mom's house. And what had happened was that his mom was saved, came to faith through a missionary couple that was down in this city in the Eurasia region. And they were discipling her, and she was faithfully reading her Bible and coming to church. And then one day the missionary couple wakes up and they get the red stamp. So, which is, hey, you got to leave, right?
Wow.
So they got kicked out of the country.
Yeah.
They wake up to that, and they've got to pack all their stuff and figure out what do we do with the church? How do we let this work continue on? And so they look around and they find Mirach's mom, and they said, this woman's been faithful in coming and studying the word. And what we want to do is actually pass the leadership of the church off to her so that she can continue to grow it. And so she takes up the leadership of this local church, 20 to 30 believers. And as she begins to pastor the community, she's then looking around going, what is the next generation of leadership going to look like?
How can we train them?
And how can we train them? Is there training?
Totally.
What do we do?
Right.
Because you got this vacuum.
Yeah.
This is first generation evangelical church in this region. And so you got this vacuum of leadership resources and training resources. So she's asking around, and she begins to ask around to different other pastors to try to figure out, where could I send Mirach? Because he's sitting here getting lit up reading his Bible, but he's got no one to be formed under, right? Yeah. And she had the opportunity to get formed under this missionary couple. And so anyways, she gets a hold of one of our local leaders, and he says, well, actually, we have a training program.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so she said, oh, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to send him because, we can't really afford it, And they said, well, actually, MAPS Global has been able to raise money so that these local young leaders can come and get trained with no cost. Yeah. So they're sponsored. Wow. And so she says, this is awesome. I'm going to talk to him. And so he applies, and we accept him, and he gets to go up and train with us. And so this was just last year. He gets to go through the training program. It's about 8 months, residential. He gets theological education. He gets to go into the prayer room and experience the presence of God. And man, this kid just got lit up for prayer and worship.
We send them on a placement within their country.
Okay. Yeah.
And some of them, it's the first time they've ever done ministry in their context before. And so they're going and serving in unengaged regions, serving these. When we say churches, we're talking about a group of 10 people in one city. That's the only church.
Yeah.
And so part of our program is classroom prayer room. And then just like we do here, we send them in country for a month and a half to serve, pray, preach, and sing in their country.
Come on.
So
he gets
he graduates from that.
So he graduates, and then our leaders go, "What do you want to do?" He goes, "I want to take this prayer meeting back to my church."
Wow!
So he goes back, moves back to his city, and the first week that he's there, they start this little prayer meeting on Wednesday nights, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a small group of young believers, and they're worshiping.
2 chords on the guitar, baby. Let's
go.
Come
on, let's go. And then they hear this.
He's actually a really good musician.
Yeah, he is.
More than 2 chords.
He's better than 2. But all you need is 2.
Hey, let's go.
But then they hear this knock on the door, and they open the door, and there's a guy at the door, and he says, "Hey, I heard something. I kind of felt led to come here, and I heard this music happening. What's going on in there?"
Wow.
Right? And so Mirach, he goes, "Well, this is what we're doing. We're worshiping Jesus. Do you know Jesus?" And he says, "No." So he gets to share the gospel with him, and the guy comes to faith that night.
Whoa.
Is that first prayer meeting?
Yes.
First prayer meeting, first week back in the city,
on.
The guy comes to faith. And so it's just, you see the replication, right? Of like, you put the altar there first, and what happens? Salvation, gospel fruit all around that altar. And what's happening is, because we have these singing seminaries, these theological education centers, it's actually forming that next generation of leaders that can go into other parts of the region and plant these works in other places. So
local leaders leading local works trained at the hub.
Yeah.
And our base leader there is mentoring him still. We're resourcing him, and this prayer meeting's growing in that city.
Come on.
And come on, man.
Let's go.
That's amazing.
Let's go.
So that gives you an idea of what's happening, the activity and life around what we would call a base.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So we're planting 7 of these.
7.
We've got 3 of them already running. We're in the adoption process of the 4th, and then we've got 3 more to go. We know the cities, we know the locations, we have the strategic connections. We've already gone and lit the fires of prayer and prayed with these ones, and we're in the planting process. And so there's an opportunity for people to be a part of getting to the 7 and filling the 1040 window with light.
Yes.
Which one of you wants to tell us about that?
I'll hop in and then you can hop in too.
Yeah, tell us, because I'm stirred and we get to do this.
We're going future focus.
We set up an annual gathering, right? Yeah. And we told some of these stories about what happened in April and how it initiated and confirmed the 7 locations, and how really at that point we're halfway through the 7 years.
Yeah.
So we're on the clock, man.
Yes.
And we have a holy zeal to see these other bases planted, and then these 4, these 3 and the 4 that's in process to be sustained during that time. And so we announced that. And then about a month and a half later, I got together with some of our close partners and some new partners who've been tracking with us. And I said, guys, this is the moment that we're in. And I want to invite you to commit and to pledge funds towards a matching gift for our year-end giving for our global fund, which resources all these bases, so that we can take a step forward in 2025 to complete the adoption of the Arab Gulf missions base and move towards these last 3.
Yeah.
And they said, we're going to do it. And I was just blown away by their generosity, because what they came together and said is, we're going to commit $750,000 for a year-end matching gift towards our global fund, which means that anyone who gives in this last quarter, every dollar is actually going to be doubled in its impact up to $750,000.
Yeah.
We've already raised $150,000, so we got $600,000 to go in these last few weeks. But I'm just excited at how God is stirring the hearts of believers here in the American church towards generosity, so that we can see these regions that have no access to the gospel, that have very few formation centers, and see these regions lit up for the gospel, for these altars to be planted, for future leaders to be formed, and then for church planting works to come out of that.
Yeah.
And it's a really exciting time.
Yes.
As we move into 2025.
It feels like we're cresting a hill, that we've been slowly, hiking up.
Right.
And we're cresting this thing, and it feels like it's about to, just catch this as we end. I know we're landing, but just catch this for a second. Here's why we're really excited, and why I'm saying there's momentum right now. And there's, momentum ebbs and flows, but we're in a momentum season. Last year, we did a matching gift for $300,000.
Right.
Right. And we not only matched it, we exceeded it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That was last year, $300,000. The next year, the matching gift is double that.
Right.
And so, whereas last year, the full potential of that year-end gift was around $600,000, now it's $1.5 million.
Right.
That's the moment we're standing in now for the next 6 weeks till the end of the year. Is every dollar given goes to up to $1.5 million coming in.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, that's awesome. Our annual budget's about $6.5 million. That's amazing. But here's what's crazy about it. At the same time that the pipelines of generosity are opening, the pipelines of laborers are opening at the same time.
Yeah. Right.
And this is, we're experiencing this right now. So I'll be careful not to get too far ahead of ourselves. But I can say this with confidence. We've had more people apply to our spring school than ever before for a semester, for an intake, before.
That's right.
We're pushing 29, 30 applications right now.
Yeah.
And we're still a month and a half out. Usually it's about half that at this time.
Right.
And so what I'm seeing is in the same year that we've gotten clarity in all the locations and we've started the process of planting is the same year the pipelines of resources are opening and the pipelines of laborers are opening.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I'm just putting all the math together and going, oh, the Lord is opening this door and the Lord is releasing wind right now behind us to see this 2028 vision through.
Yeah.
And so why we're getting on a podcast and doing this is because I'm going, hey, jump on the train with us. This thing's going.
Yeah.
And we're about to see 4 bases pop off
in
the next couple of years. And we're about to see pipelines of resources open up like we've never seen before. And those resources aren't just to, to have a lot of money sit in the bank for Maps Global. It's because the amount of laborers that are coming in, we're going to need that money, not only for laborers to be sent from Richmond to the nations, but laborers to be trained in Eurasia and sent into their nation. We've trained and sent the first local missionaries in the Middle East, Middle East missions base.
Yeah. Wow.
And that thing's becoming a sending center.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching at the end of 2024, all this stuff kind of come together.
Yeah.
And I'm going, whoa, we got to pay attention to this. And for our friends and our family, and for those that are being introduced to Maps Global, you're coming right in the middle of a storyline and you're coming at just the right time.
Yeah.
To jump on with us and go, I want to be a part of this story and praying for us and giving to this and going on short-term trips or applying for the school. But the Lord is leading this parade of 7 bases because he's jealous for these 7 regions to have Antiochs. And we just get to be a part of the storyline.
Totally.
And so we want to invite you to be a part of that story with us right now at the end of 2024, because it's not only an opportunity, it's happening.
Yeah.
And I just believe if you're watching this, that it could very well be that you have a part to play in that story.
That's right.
Yes. That's so good. And one thing that we want to give you guys is we've put a link in the description to our annual report. We're just sending this out to anybody that wants it, and you can actually click on the link and download it. If you want to read more about what we're talking about, you want to read more about these locations, even about what we do here at headquarters.
You can download I got a digital.
Let's go right here.
So it looks so.
Yeah. If you want to read a really nice letter from the president right there. But we've got all of our numbers in here, stats, what's happening, stories, all this stuff. So click the link, download the annual report, read through it just to hear more about what God's done in this last year, and let your heart be stirred for the storyline that he's writing. You can be a part of what he's doing in the 1040 window too. Like Randy said, you could come on a trip with us. We'll be doing the 50 hours again this upcoming April. But right now in this unique season, this window that we're in, there's an incredible opportunity to double the impact of your gift, sowing into what the Lord's doing as he's lighting lampstands across the 1040 window. So we get to do this.
TDT.
We get to do this.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Amazing. All right. Well, anything else, you guys? All right, we're good. We're going to close out this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching the Maps Global podcast. We love you. Have an amazing day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Maps Global podcast. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and check out previous episodes. Have you seen our 50 Hours documentary? Watch it now. And don't forget to sign up for our email newsletters.